Hello, everyone. I am excited to see you. Thanks for joining us in this beautiful conversation. Welcome back to another Be Relieved conversation. If you have not been here before, I am your host, Ashley, or AshleeNycole, depends on which one you want to call me, but either or is fine. And today we're just having a conversation that I believe so many people, especially women, really need to hear. I mean, when we talk about wellness, we often talk about what we can add to our lives, right? Like better nutrition, herbs, even movement, mindfulness, and even healthier routines. But there's another part of wellness that we don't always talk about and really don't talk about it enough, and which is the process of reclaiming your voice, your choices, your identity, and ultimately your relationship with life itself. So today I'm joined by someone who understands that journey on a deeply personal level, and her name is Dana Diaz. And she's a best-selling and award-winning author of a memoir trilogy inspired by her experiences with abuse and domestic violence and the healing journey that followed that. She has shared her story on nearly 300 podcasts all around the world, and today she is the host of Shifting Gears. I love that name on Women Thrive TV. So, known as the power shifter, when she takes the stage, Dana is a truth teller and a transformational guide who helps women reclaim their voices and their choices so they can truly learn to love life again. I mean, that's really relatable. And I think that message just fits so beautifully into what we're exploring with the Be Relief in the Flow, breath, flow states, and conscious living, because flow isn't simply about productivity, right? Or getting more done. It can also be about what happens when we stop living from survival and become more conscious of what's happening within us and begin creating enough space to actually hear ourselves again. So, as a health scientist and herbalist, I'm deeply interested in the connection between our minds, bodies, nervous systems, and the way that we experience our lives. And as an entrepreneur as well, I also know what it can feel like to constantly push, constantly perform, and produce. So today, I just want to explore a different question with Dana, which is what happens when we stop forcing our lives and start consciously choosing how we want to live them. So, Dana, welcome to the Be Relief conversation. I'm just so grateful to have you here. I'm so
Thank
excited.
you. I'm very excited too because you said everything so beautifully, but it is all about conscious living. And we'll get a little more into it, but what people don't realize is our subconscious is actually driving 95% of our life. So it's all about the conscious living, and that's the key to everything.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I mean, let's just start with your journey, just to kind of start us off with your story, because before you became the power shifter, there was a journey that taught you
Yeah.
exactly why this work really matters. Can you tell us just a little bit more about your story?
Yeah, the short version of the 50 years of my life is that I was born to a teenage mother who did not want me, planned to leave me at the hospital. But as fortune would have it, grandma and great grandma decided that wasn't going to be the case. So I was brought home to my family anyway.
Mm,
Unfortunately, my mother never warmed up to me. She was very distant, neglectful in many ways. And then the man she married was outright abusive on
mm,
multiple levels.
mm,
So, enduring a childhood where I was abused
mm,
daily in many ways, with a mother who rejected my cries for help, even
mm,
began to participate in it. And when I was 16, actually was involved in trying to end my existence.
mm,
Um, it was very difficult to go out in the world knowing that there was never, ever going to be an opportunity for anyone to mistreat me again,
Mm-hmm.
but to then spend the next 25 years of my life with a man who basically continued what my mother and stepfather began. I was in my with my first husband, very when I say narcissistic, I don't mean it lightly. I mean abusive, violent. There was
Mm-hmm.
alcoholism involved as well.
Wow.
Um, but it took all of 40 some years after 25 years with him to realize that everything, every choice I had made in my life, every belief I had, everything, the trajectory of my life was all sourced back to the beginning, which was being with people who told me on a daily basis that I should have never been born, that nobody would ever love me. All those terrible things that, you know, some people choose to say to their children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was when I started to try to heal that, after my divorce, I started this healing journey. I had no idea it would land me in the realm of neuroscience and nervous systems,
Mm-hmm.
all these things, but I was sort of forced there because it was at the end of my first marriage where, and sadly, what led me to end that marriage was my own illness. I ended up with a lung syndrome that was caused by living in fight or flight mode for 40 some years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And the mind body connection then became a daily reality for me. You
Yeah.
hear the scratchiness in my voice. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never had asthma, nothing. But
Wow.
this is just from me talking and using oxygen. It's a
Mm-hmm.
strain. So what do
Mm-hmm.
I do? I decided to become a writer and a speaker because why not?
Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Wow. That's a very uh sensitive story, because I know that so many people have kind of, can relate to that, have been through similar situations in one way or another. And like you said, being in this fight or flight response for any length of time can definitely show up in our health,
Mhm.
definitely show up in our subconscious, like how we mentioned earlier, in the healing process. It's like we do have to heal because that subconscious will start leading the way
Mhm.
sometimes. And when it's not healed, you may gravitate or attract some things that maybe are not healthy in your journey that you're in
Mhm.
now. So it is important to kind of just step back and see. Sometimes we can't control these situations, but we can control the outcome that it has on ourselves by taking some actions within our healing journey. I know that all of that surviving, those difficult experiences and then becoming this transformational guide. Like, can you take us back to a moment when you realized, I don't want to just survive anymore? I want to actually live. Like, what was the one moment that kind of gave you that thought process?
It was what I call my dark night of the soul moment. And it
Mm,
was after I had been diagnosed with my lung syndrome, but
mhm,
before I decided to end my first marriage, because my doctor sat me down, and I want people to understand I was a very healthy person. I'm one of those, people that eats avocados and hard boiled eggs and
yeah.
all organic and gluten free. And I coached cross country, I ran miles every day, healthy. So it
Mhm,
did not make sense when I became so physically ill that I
mhm.
dropped to 93 pounds. I was carrying a breathing machine in a backpack just to keep my heart rate up so that
Wow.
my heart would keep pumping, so that my
Mhm,
muscles wouldn't stiffen. I was very ill. And my
mhm,
doctor sat me down and said, your body is shutting down. Multiple organ systems are shutting down.
mm,
So if you want to live past 44, because I was 44 at the time, he said, you have to change whatever it is. There is no pill. There is no surgery we can give you. There is something that is so toxic in your life that that emotional distress that it's causing you is creating all this physical distress.
Mm,
I remember going home that night. I would not sleep in the same bed as my then husband because
mm,
of the violence and the volatility of just his presence even. So I slept in the basement on this very stiff and hard leather sofa down there.
mhm,
But I just remember laying there and feeling obviously very alone, facing mortality at a young age,
yeah,
thinking about my 16-year-old son that I wanted to see him graduate high school. I
right,
want to see him get married. I want to see where his life goes. And I'm getting chills right now just retelling it that
yeah,
I actually thought in that moment, what do I want? It just out of
mhm,
thin air, this question came, what do I even want? And then I thought, my next thought was, wow, I know what I want, but
mhm,
it's weird that nobody had ever asked me what I wanted.
mm,
It didn't matter.
mhm,
All that mattered was what everyone else wanted, what my abusive husband wanted, what my mother expected, what my everybody. I go to work, everybody wants, wants, wants. And I
mhm,
think we as women,
yes,
I don't want to sound like a feminist, but at the end of the day, the female experience is very different from the male experience.
I agree.
People expect a lot from women, and
Mhm,
women are conditioned societally in their families, culture, whatever,
mhm,
give, 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 even when we have nothing left to give.
mhm,
So I'm sitting there thinking, what do I want? Nobody's ever asked me what I want. And I knew what I wanted
mhm,
immediately. I was like, oh, I very much want to be married.
yeah,
I very much want to give love, that all this love I have, but I want to receive it back. But
mhm,
I knew that couldn't happen with the man that was sleeping 2 floors above me.
mm,
Obviously, I gave him 25 years. It wasn't happening. I
wow,
wanted to be a writer because I went to school. I had a degree in journalism from DePaul University. I wanted to write. When
mhm,
had I ever written? Of course, I hadn't written. I was busy just trying to stay alive. And
mhm,
I don't mean that by any means in a dismissive way. I was literally trying to stay alive at this point, physically within my marriage.
mhm,
But it was also this moment that made me, having all these things in my head that yes, I want these things, realizing I can't have those things in the circumstances that I was in, but also facing the reality that if I want to physically remain alive,
mhm,
if I want to have any chance at happiness and fulfillment, there are things that need to change.
mhm,
Going back to that discussion with the doctor, that what is it in your life that's causing you all this toxicity?
mhm,
And I hate to say it was the people, it was the abusive husband, it was the very strained relationship with my mother after
mhm,
everything that had happened in my life. It was trying to maintain politeness and courtesy with my stepfather after everything he had done to me.
mhm, yeah,
And trying to keep the family together and carrying all this shame and all the things. And that's when I finally just said, I'm done.
yeah,
Because you know what? I'm we get so caught up in playing these roles.
mhm,
I
mhm,
did not want to be that man's wife anymore. It
mhm,
was literally killing me inside.
yeah,
My body was screaming, we don't want to do this anymore. I didn't want to be my mother's daughter anymore or my stepfather's stepdaughter. And honestly, I was tired of being all these things to everybody else and being lost within all that.
mhm,
Because beneath all these roles is who we are.
mhm,
And when people don't see that and we don't live that out in some way in our lives, that's when that depression and anxiety and all those things set in. And it does affect, you know, what goes on in our body, the mind body connection. We can become physically ill from that emotional distress. So that was the turning point for me. But I want to be very clear because you said it actually in the introduction. And I think it is worth saying again. You
mhm,
don't have to have been abused. You don't have to have been in a domestic violence situation to feel this way. You could have been bullied as a child, or even I have a 50 some year old woman right now bullying me. It's very real, but it
mhm,
could just be any stress, even in good things. Being a mother was one of the greatest joys of my life. And I say was because my son is now 23. And he doesn't need mom anymore. He does. He just doesn't want to acknowledge that. But it's the biggest joy of my life. But even in that joy, there is stress, especially
Mhm.
when your children are younger and dependent on you as a woman, as mom. So it can even be those wonderful things that are
Mhm.
bringing in this stress that
Mhm.
causes us, to have some emotional, upset, or, that burnout we talk about, the physical
Mhm.
expressions of those emotions. So this isn't just isolated to bullying, abuse, and domestic violence. This is every woman's plight, I think, everywhere. And we don't really speak to it much because women are just expected to just push through, and we glorify for them for that. But I
Mhm.
think it's a good time for us to say, no, we deserve to breathe a little bit. We deserve to be healthy mentally and physically. And sometimes that means stepping back from our roles and just really embracing who we are as humans, as individuals.
For sure. I definitely agree with that. I feel like sometimes we have to be willing to peel back those role layers and
Mm-hmm.
really sit with who we are, whether that is in a positive light or a negative light. They both can be used to help facilitate your healing in any shape and form, really. And I think that once we kind of sit with ourselves and ask that question on what do you want, I
Mm-hmm.
think we can start to get clear on where we are going, and also
Yes.
realizing that whatever is outer reflects inner, and whatever's inner does reflect outer. And I think that helps us to see the life that we are creating from that hurt place, if we are in a hurt place, or even from a joyous place. I think that is the power that we have as women, is to create that life. And it is kind of hard. You have all the roles, you have to be there for everyone, but don't neglect yourself in this process. We do have to fill our cups as well and take that time to just be us at the core, without having to be mom, without having to be the boss lady, without having to be this person. Just be yourself. And sometimes it is scary for some. I think some people are where they don't really know who they are at that
Right.
time, or they know what they want but aren't sure, because of past patterns and experiences. But I really believe we take a leap of faith, and choose ourselves in any situation in our healing journey. I think it will better us in the long run. And even as a health scientist, I'm just so fascinated by this transition, because we often talk about health as an absence of disease, right? Like, as long as you don't have a disease, you're healthy. But true wellness is so much bigger than that, I believe. It's about how we experience our lives. It can be just as simple or complex as that, or our bodies, how we experience our bodies. And also how we experience our relationships with our family members, with people we meet along the way, and even our sense of possibilities. The possibility of whatever you are thinking to be obtainable, to know that you can go after it. So I know you talk a lot about helping women reclaim their voice and their choices. What happens to a person internally when they spent maybe years feeling like their voice, their needs, their choices don't matter?
Well, I think a lot of things happen, but it goes back to something you just spoke of now, which, you're talking about health.
Mhm.
To live in a healthy state means to live in a healed state. Just take the
Mhm.
word. Health starts with heal. You want to
Mhm.
live in a healed state that is mentally and physically. So when you lose your voice, when you feel when there is any fear of speaking up or asserting yourself, of setting a boundary, of
Mhm.
saying, whether you're 5 years old or 55 years old,
Yeah.
saying, you are not allowed to treat me this way. You are not allowed
Mhm.
to put your hands on me. You are not, whatever it is. When you don't feel that you can open your mouth and say that to somebody, you're basically handing your power over to them.
Mhm.
And so, what does that do to you? that makes you feel powerless. And when
Mm-hmm.
you feel powerless, you begin to fall into these, again, I feel like the depression, anxiety is, I realize they're real mental health issues, but I think that a lot of people that feel them, especially women, I think it's more of a symptom of their circumstances
Yeah.
as opposed to like a permanent state of mind or being. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what happens because you're disappointing yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
know something is wrong, or you feel fearful in expressing your true opinion, your true
Mm-hmm.
self.
Yeah.
And that again, you lose yourself. Your authenticity goes away because now you are living, I don't want to say the word fake, but you are not being completely authentic. So call
For
that
sure.
whatever you will, but there is something that, in the spiritual world, they call it alignment. And
Mm-hmm.
even for people that don't like to get into the woo, the reality is when your thoughts and your actions and your decisions, your behaviors are not all on the same page, you are
Mm-hmm.
not aligned. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a wonderful thing. Like you talk about the flow state. The flow state is where you feel some inner peace, where people say, how can you be so confident? Well, confidence, all these wonderful things, qualities we admire in others come from being aligned, when
Mm-hmm.
everything aligns. So when you are not speaking up for yourself, when you lose your voice, you're basically giving up your power to be authentic. And the thing is, there's no shame or judgment. I
Yeah.
spent 40 some years of my life surviving because and this goes back to the neuroscience. Your nervous system tells you not to say that thing or do that thing. It sort of prevents you from using your voice because
Mm-hmm.
it's saying, I always imagine Lost in Space, that robot with its coily arms, danger, danger, Will Robinson. That's your nervous system saying, don't say that thing because this is the consequence. Don't say that thing because you're going to invite conflict. Don't say that thing because there's going to be lashback. And we want to feel safe. Our nervous systems want us to feel safe, whatever that means, whether it's physically safe, mentally safe, or just generally comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all fall into that. That we all fall into that for decades or in certain moments, maybe even only with certain people. It's normal. But to live
Mm-hmm.
in that state constantly, you're not living, you can't have fulfillment and inner peace and all these things if you're constantly betraying who you are and
Mm-hmm.
denying yourself your full expression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. I've seen this from a different perspective through my work in wellness and herbalism. But the body can communicate things that we haven't consciously put into words just yet. So
Yep.
sometimes our physical state is telling a story about what we've been carrying emotionally. That actually reminds me of my grandmother. She was a very strong woman, always there for her family, very loving, caring, but she didn't express her true feelings a lot of the times. And I've seen over the time, just like, oh, I know that you felt some way about that, but you didn't say anything or you didn't express it. And one day she had a stroke and never spoke again. And she
Oh,
later eventually did pass away. And that awareness to me as a child was like, you had a chance to really speak and say your truth out loud, whether to yourself or to the person that maybe caused you some harm, or maybe just even just to the universe in a way. And you didn't take advantage of that opportunity. And it was eating her alive. And I really believe that was why or what triggered the stroke. And then for her to only lose her voice is very interesting to me as well, and so we have to make sure we're using the gifts that were already given to us while we have them, and also to secure them in a way. And
mhm.
so I think that is just a reminder how the body really remembers even when your mind may forget or maybe put it on the back burner. So I know we hear that phrase, and the body remembers, quite often. So from your own healing journey, what did you learn about the connection between emotional experiences, the body, and the way we move through life?
Oh, it's everything. Everything starts with what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can go on, my mind is already pinging. There's so many ideas coming to mind, but
Yeah.
beginning with my experience, it was, the emotional distress, or, you could just say stress, chronic stress
Mm-hmm.
that, in the moments when something is happening, and anybody that has ever been in a situation where the common thing is, stand up and introduce yourself, or, get up and talk in front of people. Everybody, the panic, it's the heart racing. It's maybe you have sweaty armpits, or if you're like me, it's only one sweaty armpit,
Yeah,
or,
that's me.
you feel things you feel things in your stomach. Maybe your stomach even gets upset, like
Yeah.
irritable bowel syndrome. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for me, when I was a kid, it's interesting. I had migraines and stomach aches all the time. And I only put this together in recent years. They started when I was 7. Well,
Mm-hmm.
my mother married her husband when I was 7. So
Mm-hmm.
that's not a coincidence. So it's interesting because we look at our physical symptoms as solely medical, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm a type A and I'm a Capricorn, so I make spreadsheets. And when I became ill because I had so many random symptoms that did not seem related. But when I did put them on a spreadsheet and started looking for patterns,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just letting it sit in my mind and telling the
Right.
doctor, oh, this happens a lot, or this
Yeah.
happens once in a while. I wanted to give concrete data that we could work with because something was very wrong with me and we couldn't figure it out. But
Right.
it took us a little while, but it was absolutely related to the stress as far as the
Mm-hmm.
severity of the symptoms, the frequency of the symptoms.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about everything from neurological, cardiovascular,
Mm-hmm.
muscular. Every part of my body was reacting to
Stress.
stress,
Yeah.
whatever stress. But again, stress can come from good things. I want to be very clear about that. Was not so much in my life, but
Mm-hmm.
it's stress is a very serious thing that,
Yeah.
it's the cause of inflammation.
For
Inflammation
sure.
causes cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It messes your hormones up. It
Mm-hmm.
makes your thyroid wonky, which as women, we don't need help with that. There's all kinds of things that we
Yeah.
go through. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many places to go. And I will only touch upon one more point on this is that I recently had the absolute privilege of speaking on stage with longevity scientists and neuroscientists and biologists of everything. And I was the only one who didn't have the two fancy letters in front of their name. But what I learned from all of them, I was still suffering from migraines weekly,
Mm-hmm.
um, just because of life. And this is, part of my chronic illness, although I'm not calling it that anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
it goes back to what we believe. Every one of these very scientific and very well educated and accomplished people talked to the point of what you believe creates your reality. So if you believe I'm chronically ill, if you believe I'm not well, or we say in the when people are depressed, I'm broken, I'm damaged, all these things, your mind is telling your body all of this, and your body is reacting
Mm-hmm.
with hormones, with inflammation, with all these things that cause diseases and chronic illness. So I began to take some of their notes and started to nurture and talk to think and
Mm-hmm.
speak to my
Exactly.
migraines, as silly as
Mm-hmm.
that sounds. And you know what? I have gone almost 3 months now without a migraine. And I'm talking years. I had at least one a week, some very debilitating. And it's like magic when you learn to think your
Mm-hmm.
body into health.
Mm-hmm.
But again, your healing starts with what you believe. And that's why I think it's so critical. Our self talk, really looking at what we believe. Can you
Mm-hmm.
change what you believe? Absolutely. And I will show you how. But there's so much to, no matter how many self-help books you read, no matter how many supplements you take, no matter how much you work out, everything comes back to what you truly believe.
For sure. I definitely believe that the mind doesn't know the difference in between what's real and fake. It just knows about the experience that you gave it or what you're programming yourself to say, and
Yes.
also what you're hearing outside of yourself as well. You know, we call it programming in a way, but the art of
Hmm.
repetition matters. And
Yes.
so repeating something that you believe is really influencing your thoughts and also what's manifesting physically as well. Even
Yeah.
earlier when you were talking about it, just reminded me of when I was younger, at about, let's say maybe like 12, 13, I used to pass out a lot. And
Mm.
at first, when it was happening, during the time it was happening, went to the doctor, got the MRIs, and they're like, everything looks normal. I don't know what's going on with her. And when I kept hearing that, I'm like, what's going on? So it wasn't until I was 23 that I realized that, wow, at 12 and 13, of course, I'm being a little defiant, a little rebellious to my parents, right? And so when they were interrogating me, in my experience growing up, my parents interrogated me, and that created stress for me.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I would be so nervous or so scared of maybe the question, maybe the feelings that came with it, maybe the consequences, even, and I will pass out. And
Hmm.
so it wasn't until maybe like in my 30s that I even like, oh, this really affects me, stress at any level, whether it's small, whether it's medium size. Stress
Yeah.
is stress. And so I learned, like, okay, during interrogations or where I'm getting asked questions, maybe that challenged my thought or challenged my perspective, to just be solid in that and be comfortable where I'm not stressing my whole entire body, where now I'm passing out, or am I getting a headache, like you said, and now I have to go to sleep, and it's a lot. So that definitely reminded me of my own journey, and I think this is where neuroscience becomes really interesting to me, because even as a health scientist, I'm constantly thinking about the communication between the brain and the body. And even as a herbalist, I also look at how we can support the body through natural practices. And
Yes.
healing really isn't happening in just one part of us. I think it's a whole body system. I really believe that holistic should be spelled with a W in front of H, because it's a whole
Yeah.
entirety. And I think they missed the W when they spelt that for holistic. But I know that you host Shifting Gears. I love the name of that. And I know that you're known as the power shifter. What does shifting gears actually look like when someone realizes that the life they've been living no longer aligns with who they're becoming?
Well, there's so much to that, but it's just about shifting what you believe. I mean, it starts there. It's that reprogramming that you were talking about. And we say that because it's like, I always say your mind is like a computer, and
Hmm.
or even your phone. We all have a phone, and every once in a while we have to update the program, right? You got to
For
update
sure.
it and wait, and it's annoying. So you set it for 2 in the morning, and that's fine.
Yes.
But we have to do that because what most people don't realize is that what we believe specifically about ourselves and our place, our role in the world around us, in the family, in our community, and extending beyond that, that those ideas are developed before the age of 7. And
Hmm.
and if you think about a 7-year-old, that's very little. That's like second or third grade, maybe, I guess, depending what time of the year you're born in. And you
Hmm.
carry those beliefs your whole life.
Hmm.
Those beliefs about who you are, who you were told to be, I should say, because that
Hmm.
doesn't mean it's true. Who you were told you should be drives 95% of your daily actions, decisions, and behaviors. When you're 20, when you're 30, when you're 40, you got to update the program.
Hmm.
So when I talk about shifting gears, it's about just kind of shifting some ideas, because at the end of the day, let's be real. Like, you can't just like take out all your old beliefs and decide you want to put new ones in there. That would be like telling somebody to jump into the ocean and swim with the sharks. That would terrify everybody. No, you start at the beach, dipping your toes in the water, And
Mhm.
then you go in a little further when you feel comfortable, right? I use this analogy because we want to do things in a way that tells our nervous system that we're okay. And
Right.
so like when I like on my show, in my blogs, all the things, I have a shifting gears course program as well. It's all about developing a relationship with yourself where you trust yourself. You know what you want. I'm going to dip your toes in the water till you feel comfortable setting the boundary. Then we're going to move a little further and set another boundary till we get to that point. Because let's be real, let's take my example, me for an example. I'm in an abusive marriage, um, that was going to end my life, not just because of my physical health, but because of the threats and the things I was living in. If
Mm.
you told me at that time, just leave him, yeah, I could have, but we don't understand why women stay. Well, because my nervous system was saying, "Oh my, I can't just walk out. There's consequences." that
Mhm.
that that could have been very detrimental. So we have to do things in a way where your nervous system feels comfortable letting you take the next step. Part of that is trusting yourself that you're going to be okay, but you have to, again, going back to where we started this conversation, you have to consciously tell your body, tell yourself, you're okay. You got this. It's going to be okay. Yes, bad things might happen. Yes, people might not approve of what you say and do. Yes, there are going to be things that might not go the way you planned. But are you going to be okay? Yes, you're going to be okay. And this is presuming you are actually going to be okay, because obviously there's situations where you have to take other things into account, but it's
Mhm.
just taking the next step. Shifting gears is just about, when you're sitting in the car, if you drive manual, you put it in first gear first, then in second gear, that you don't just go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds unless you have a Lamborghini and it's automatic. I don't know, but it's just about shifting your mindset one thing at a time. You can't just, nothing can ever be done overnight. You're not going to just all of a sudden, go from I'm broken and the next day you wake up and say I'm fabulous. I'm the gift to the world. It doesn't work that way. So it's just baby steps. It's baby steps that you feel comfortable taking, that develop trust in yourself, to keep putting one foot in front of the other until you get to that point where you're like, you know what? Yeah, I actually am a gift to this world. I actually am an amazing human being. They may not have thought so. They may have influenced me to believe differently for all that time, but this is who I am now. And may I say, we are humans. And for those that haven't figured it out, took me a while, and I wish somebody had told me, we're supposed to grow, we're supposed to learn, we're supposed to evolve. So that
Mhm.
means life is going to have struggles, life is going to have obstacles, and they're going to continue to come. So you have to develop this relationship with yourself, shift some of the things you think, shift some of the ways you move throughout the world, because when you shift those things, it's kind of like surfing the waves. You will
Mhm.
flow so much better than if you try to come up against it and fight it.
For sure. I love that because entrepreneurship has taught me something similar. Whether you're building a company, right, or changing careers, or becoming a mother, healing, or simply just entering, a new season of life, there are moments where the old version of you can't necessarily drive to the new destination of where you're going. And like you said, it is a shift. And a lot of times it's from perspective, like how you were saying, like who you were told to be, and now you can tell yourself who you are.
Yeah.
So just shifting it or gaining a new perspective, and that comes from the involvement that we have as humans, being willing to have a little bit more self awareness and study ourselves. I think sometimes we study everyone else and be there for everyone else. We can study ourselves and figure out how to be there for ourselves. And I love that about the healing journey because it's really up to you. You are the master of your healing journey. And you can go as fast as you want, as slow, as minuscule, or as large. It's really up to you. And I know we talked about, healing without losing yourself a little bit earlier, how sometimes when people begin healing, they think they have to completely reinvent themselves, right? But we talked about how healing isn't really about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who we are underneath everything that we experience, or all, underneath the roles that we have done or put onto ourselves.
Yeah.
And that really resonates, deeply with the concept of conscious living, how we talked about earlier, that we're exploring with Be Relief in the Flow. And for me, conscious living means becoming more aware of what is actually happening within us rather than constantly operating on autopilot, which is where the subconscious comes in, right? That to me is the autopilot, it's the
Right.
subconscious. So when we're not in control, our subconscious, and so I think that's why it's important to start healing in that area, because it will lead sometimes if we do go on to autopilot. Something that you want to add to that conversation?
There's always so much more to add. I think you hit the nail on the head. The only thing that really I think stands out though for me is like when you talk about conscious living, like I know so many people talk about becoming. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's like it's not about becoming, it's just about being who
Yeah.
you are now, today, in this
Mm-hmm.
moment, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure everybody can relate. I have been many things in my life and not just roles. There are many versions of me that have lived my life. But I just want to be who I am today with everything I have learned, everything I have experienced, all the growth, all the
Yeah.
not so growing parts of it too. But just to be and
Yeah.
to embrace that, because nobody is, I love the idea of wholeness and fulfillment and all these things, but I think that's what the ultimate goal is.
Yeah.
And we are always trying to get there, but we need to just get okay with just being.
Yes, for sure. And then honestly, I mean, not to get dark, but we're all not guaranteed tomorrow. And so
Right.
it's important that we be in today. And I think
Yes.
it's important to be for ourselves, but also to be a positive demonstration, to all those who come in contact with us today
Mhm.
as well. Um, I know that you help women reclaim their choices, right? So,
Mhm.
why is choice such a powerful part of healing? And how can someone begin making different choices when they spent years maybe believing that they don't really have any, don't really have choices? Maybe they're stuck in that situation?
Yeah, exactly. Well, those are the shifts, are the choices, because
Okay.
in every moment, every single moment is an opportunity to make a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
People, maybe somebody is on a health journey and is sitting down to eat lunch. Well, you have a choice. Are you going to eat the Big Mac, or are you going to have the grilled chicken and the sliced avocado? It's a
Mm-hmm.
choice. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you have a choice when you're very upset with your partner. Are you going to start up and cause some stuff with them? Or are you going
Mm-hmm.
to sit down and have a mature conversation and say, hey, can we talk about this? Every situation in our life presents a choice. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's when we start to shift what, like you were saying, what we would do on autopilot into
Mm-hmm.
what we are choosing to do because it has a better consequence and leads to where we actually want to go and demonstrates more of who we want to be,
Mm-hmm.
then that's where we go. I always, when I work with people, I say it's kind of like if you're walking down a path and you come to a crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
You always go to the right. It's just without even thinking about it. It's
Mm-hmm.
about taking that pause and saying, okay, I know what's down there. That's why I always go that way. I know,
Mm-hmm.
even if the result, even if what's down there is not positive, you know how to go that way. This is
Right.
like, when people look at me and say, well, how did you end up in your first marriage after your abusive childhood? Because it's what I knew. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good, but it's what I knew. It was
Mm-hmm.
familiar, it was
Mm-hmm.
autopilot. So it's
Right.
taking that pause and saying, okay, I don't know what's down that other way. I've never gone that way before.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary. My nervous system is making me feel anxious.
Yeah.
I'm going to take one step at a time and consciously choose to go in that direction and trust myself that I'm going to be okay.
For sure. I think that's the powerful point about being a human, is the power of choice. And also, I think that kind of, I guess, is synonymous with intuition in a way. You know,
Hmm.
choosing or making a choice, yes, sometimes it is difficult to make a choice, but the fact that you're able to, and also choose a choice that you feel is best for you in the moment. Sometimes listening to that inner voice that we have kind of quiet down a bit from whatever life has done to us to kind of uh, quiet down that voice, just being able to listen to it more, which is really just ourselves saying, hey, try this choice. And like you said, sometimes the nervous system does go wonky. I know for me, my stomach starts fluttering, my armpits, they're sweating profusely. And I've noticed that majority of time when I am anxious like that, it's because a breakthrough is coming. Another level of life is happening, and it also changes me. It creates a new me in that process. And sometimes that is a little. It's not really scary, but it is. It could be a little anxious feeling of, oh, who am I going to become after this decision is made? But you won't know unless you do it. And I love evolving and changing, and I think that this is, just really important for women who are caregivers. I know I have a lot of caregivers that are going through that. A lot of entrepreneurs, even mothers, I hear stories all the time, even partners, romantic or platonic, or even leaders, because we can become so accustomed to taking care of everyone else that we stop asking ourselves, what do I actually need? Back to that question of what do I want and what is it that I actually need? Now, I know our
Yeah.
summit is coming up August 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And our summit is called Be Relief in the Flow. We've been talking about that in and out during our discussion. But when you hear the word flow, what does that mean to you from a personal and from a transformational perspective?
Well, I think one thing I want to say, because it actually speaks to what you just spoke about, is that who we are, who we present ourselves to be, what we believe, it affects all aspects of our life.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, what happens in our personal life affects us at our professional life. What happens in our professional life, everything is
Mhm,
all part of us. It's all integrated into who we are. But I
mhm,
think to be in flow is, to me, what that means is for everything to be aligned.
mhm.
And we all live in, we are all very misaligned sometimes because we're trying so hard to juggle so many different expectations and
Yeah.
obligations and roles and all the things, again, as
Mhm.
women. But I
Yeah.
think I'm that person. This is why I'm called the power shifter, because I'm that girl that's going to sit here and say, now hold on. When you tell me I can't or I shouldn't or I should or whatever, I'm here to say, no, that's a choice.
Mhm.
Nobody else can make you do anything. You don't have to do anything. Again, the way you think and the way you speak has to shift in order
Mhm.
for you to get good with yourself, to be on the same page, to get everything, your physical, mental, all your states on the same page. If
Mhm.
you honor what you want in every moment, in every aspect of your life or need, we should say honor what you want or need,
Mhm.
you're usually going to be much more okay than if you don't.
Yeah.
And I know that people challenge me on this, but I will go back to them and say, you either give your power away or you take your power back. And
Mhm.
this isn't about being big and bold and making waves. It's about taking care of you,
Absolutely.
taking care of you. Everything else, unless a life is literally hinging on something you say or do or your presence, it's okay for you to take care of you in the midst of life.
For sure. I love that definition. I love the definition because when I think about flow from the health and neuroscience side, I think about those moments where we're fully present, right? We're focused, we're creative, we're connected. And it
Yeah.
makes me wonder like how much of our ability to experience flow is affected by what we're carrying internally. I think it's very interesting. I love that you call yourself the power shifter, because for me, I call myself a disruptor to patterns.
Oh,
It's
yes.
kind of
Yes.
like you. I like to take patterns, and maybe it's the science part of my brain where I like to have that data and disrupt those patterns because of, like you said earlier, it affects our mind, almost like the self talk. I'm going to
Yes.
disrupt that pattern of telling myself I can't do, I won't, I this, I that. Or even as simple as like, oh, my back hurts. My back hurts. No, my back
Yeah.
actually feels great. I have to stretch, you know,
Yeah,
changing
exactly.
that pattern. So I definitely love that definition of flow. Now, when someone has spent a significant amount of time in survival mode,
Mhm.
what can it take for their body and mind to begin feeling safe enough to experience peace, creativity, maybe some joy, even success? What would it take for that?
Everything comes back to your beliefs, but the first thing I will say, especially when you're talking about survival mode, you
Hmm.
have to get yourself out of the circumstance that you're surviving. You
Absolutely.
cannot heal when you are still in contact and interacting with people who make you
Hmm.
feel unsafe or in circumstances that make you feel unsafe. So,
Hmm.
this is where, one of my first steps for me that I think was critical for my healing and that I work with people on is one of the first things I do is we start setting boundaries, very
Hmm.
small ones, so that it doesn't, you don't want to go confront the person who abused you your
Right.
whole life, like as your first boundary. But you have to learn that it's okay to honor how you feel and to express
Absolutely.
yourself in a mature and peaceful manner that's not
Hmm.
inviting conflict. Whether you get
Hmm.
the conflict or not is a whole other thing. But I think it's important for us to step in those situations, you know, with that self-trust. I always go back to self-trust because you have to know that you're going to be okay, but you have to teach your nervous system you're going to be okay. Because if your
Right.
nervous system doesn't feel comfortable,
Hmm.
and again, it could be anything. It could be when your teacher in third grade called on you and you didn't know the answer. Oh my God, the stress. So it doesn't
Hmm.
have to be some major catastrophe in life, but your nervous system absolutely needs to learn to feel safe before you can even begin to heal all the other things. So get
Hmm.
out of the situation, and it could be a toxic workplace. It
Hmm.
could be an abusive home environment,
Hmm.
whatever it is, or the people. You need to get yourself out of those situations when you feel comfortable enough that, okay, I can go heal now. Then you have to take one step after another to dismantle those beliefs that make you feel like you can't or shouldn't and all that, because it's
Yeah.
it's like you were just saying about the self-talk. It is so
Hmm.
critical,
Hmm.
because I even know while I was healing, like for example, going back to the crossroads, I
Hmm.
would automatically go down the I'm broken and I'm just not meant to be happy, and
Yeah.
I'd go to the right, the autopilot. And I don't know why
Hmm.
I'm even bothering and crying and having my own little pity party and fetal
Hmm.
position in
Yeah.
the master bedroom closet. And I had many of those myself.
Me
But it
too.
was, I will never forget the moment that I was about to go down that path, about to go into autopilot. And I literally stopped in the middle of the hallway. I
Hmm.
stopped walking and I said out loud, "We don't do that anymore, Dana. We do
Hmm.
not do that anymore."
Hmm.
And I chose to do what I needed in that moment. And that's why I take that, dark night of the soul moment
Hmm.
as a basis of everything I do. In that moment, I said, what do I want? What do I need right now? Because that's
Hmm.
it's the best question. If anyone takes
Right.
anything away from this or my talk next week, what do I want? Because in that moment, what did I need? I needed to feel safe, which I think
Hmm.
anybody in any stressful situation just wants to feel safe. Or maybe you want to feel heard. Maybe you want to feel soothed.
Hmm.
Whatever it is, you might want a popsicle. And I'm not trying to be funny, but
Yeah.
whatever it is we need in that exact moment, no matter
Hmm.
how illogical or irrational it may seem, embrace it. Give yourself that. Do you need a
Hmm.
moment do you need to go cry? I mean, something happened last week where as healing, as much as I've been healing, I had a moment that was very triggering.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm good. I'm fine. Like a shoe fly. But my husband looked at me and I said, okay, I'm going to go have a moment
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I know what happens when I suppress my emotions and I'm
Mhm.
really sad and I need to cry right now. I want to cry. So I'm going to go cry, then I'm going to be good. And I did
Mhm.
exactly that. And it's okay. And I think it's because we have these ideas in our head that we're supposed to do this or act like that. Stop trying to, nobody ever wants to really be strong. You
Yeah,
have to be strong because you're in these situations that force you to be something you're not. And I
mhm.
don't know. I don't want to be strong. I'd rather be, loved and well cared for and nurtured.
For sure. For sure, yeah.
So in that moment, it was just like, yeah, I'm going to go cry and I'm going to cry my eyes out. Then I'm going to wash my face, take a deep breath. Okay, now we're good. Now we can go on because I released that energy
Mhm.
outside of me. So it's a lot when you get into the healing. It takes years to get your nervous system totally safe. You're still going to confront moments where it all comes back, but it's about how you react to that. Whether you choose to go down the road you always did or you
Mhm.
choose the new path, because you take that new path long enough with enough times and enough practice of consciously doing it, that becomes your new autopilot. And that's the key to it all.
Yeah, that's powerful. I believe that the healing journey doesn't have an end date. It is a continuous journey for sure. And, even when you think that you're at a good place in your healing, there's still more healing to
Oh,
go.
it
I mean,
never
me
ends.
too. I definitely battle with this as well. I mean, I just had this conversation the other day with my husband where I can't remember what exactly happened, but I believe we got some news about something. I don't know if something was going on with our mortgage or something with our house, and uh, when it happened, the autopilot happened. We're like, "Oh, I can't believe this happened to us," and this is this, and it's just like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to use this same energy because it is an energy that comes with that.
Yeah.
When you hear something shocking or disturbing, you have this energy, and sometimes you go that autopilot, that automatic right? Or you can choose, let me just go this left. I can use that same anxious or frustrating energy, transform that, and create the outcome that I want. And when we did that, it was rectified just
Yeah.
like that. And so it just reminds me that even how we react to news, how we react to what is happening, try not to be. It's hard to say not to react in a unbalanced way, but at least try to create the outcome that you want with the energy versus spewing out something that maybe unbalanced. Maybe you'll create the situation again, or make it longer, or we really have a lot of power in what we say, and I think
Yeah.
that's why it's actually called spelling, because it is kind of like a spell in a way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so we just have to be very intentful in that process. But I do think, even when you mentioned about boundaries, I think that's something entrepreneurs especially need to hear. I mean, everyone needs to hear
Everyone
boundaries for
does.
sure. But I know entrepreneurs, even with me, boundaries is important. We celebrate being busy, right? Being productive. But there's a difference between being productive from a place of purpose and constantly operating from a state of urgency. And I think
Hmm.
that makes a major difference in our approach and even the business that we do. And so I know, of course, we're talking about healing and about healing to loving life again. I know you
Hmm.
mentioned that earlier. And I know your work is ultimately about helping women love life again. I think that is so beautiful, and it's an experience in itself, right? So, what does loving life look like after you've experienced something that fundamentally changed you? Maybe in those years before you were 7, or maybe those really major moments that just impacted trauma, even. How can we experience life, and what does loving life actually truly mean?
I think loving life actually means loving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
actually loving yourself enough to give yourself the grace to just be.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, we all have a story. We all have a story. We all have stuff that has happened. People have said things to us, done things to us. There's much more to come. It never ends. But
Absolutely.
who we are is who we choose to be. And
Mm-hmm.
you can be the victim to everything that happens to you, or you can
Mm-hmm.
constantly choose who you are.
Mm.
You know, I even had some things in the last few days that aren't ideal, and that in the past, like you were saying, I'd react to in a certain way, but I'm like, okay, is this going to change who I am? Is this going to like change my no.
Mm-hmm.
So why am I going to let the feelings over it control my present moment? Why am I going to let that rob me of my ability to experience joy or peace or any of the things that are much more pleasant to have in life? I mean, and most of the time the things we stress about are these, you know, I hate to say, but they're like more man-made, you know,
Yeah.
human experiences that, you know, when you're laying on your deathbed, they don't matter.
They don't.
So,
Yeah.
you know, love yourself enough to say, you know what? Yeah, some people treated me that way. Some people, horrible things have happened to me, but they don't mean anything about who I am.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the power to determine how my life is going to go. They
Right.
happened, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't define me. They don't
Yeah.
define this life experience for me. I get to define it. And
Mm-hmm.
so the way I look at things now is, yeah, you know what? I've made mistakes. I have not been the best person sometimes, but I give myself grace because you know what? Who the hell is perfect? I made
Yeah.
mistakes. That's part of the human experience. I
Mm-hmm.
look at the struggles and obstacles that still continue to come and say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this, but what's the lesson I need to learn here?
Right.
Why does this keep happening? What am I missing about me? Like you said before, you can't control the circumstances, you can't control
Mm-hmm.
other people. I can
Mm-hmm.
only control how I respond to this.
Exactly.
Do I want to react? Which,
Mm-hmm.
don't get me started on reactions. Reactions are never about what is, it's about what was.
Yeah.
It's something in your past that is
Yeah. I
controlling
trigger that.
how you're being
Mm-hmm.
now. But again, that's giving away your power.
Exactly.
We
Yeah.
need to stop giving our power away to people, to things that happened in the past, to circumstances, to
Mm-hmm.
man made things that don't matter in the scheme of life, and just love ourselves enough to say, okay, cool, that sucks, but what do I need to learn from? How am I going to still have peace in this moment? What am I going to choose? Having
Yeah.
those choices. What is best for me? How am I going to honor what I want? How am I going to honor what I need? Because that's where you're going to find fulfillment,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where you're going to be happy and have that flow state.
Absolutely. I love what you said about not giving your power away. You know, we have to be willing to keep our power and utilize our power. And I really believe that would change at least a good fraction of what we experience and what we have created for ourselves. Because I think that power can be useful. If it wasn't useful, then people wouldn't take it or we wouldn't give it away.
Yeah.
So it is a powerful tool to retain your power and to utilize your power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really just speaks to the heart of Be Relieved. You know, wellness isn't simply about adding another supplement, like how we mentioned, there's those supplements
Right.
in the world, or another herb, even
Yeah.
another routine or another productivity strategy. Because I always start strategizing or creating a plan. So not even that. Sometimes the deeper work is just asking ourselves, you know, am I actually present enough to experience the life I'm working so hard to create? A lot of times we're working so hard to create a bountiful life, but we're not present enough to experience it or to even see that we're already there. Sometimes we work so hard at something for so long, we don't realize that we're actually in that moment now and to enjoy it and to experience it. So I really just want our audience to know to experience the life that you're working so hard to create really become present enough to see it, to feel it, to experience it, and to share it. I think that when you're naturally full and have those things, you'll share it just by default, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, for everyone that's listening who will be joining us for our Be Relief in the Flow on August 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, what do you hope people walk away understanding about their own power and their own choices and their ability to create a different experience of life?
I think just all in all that they can,
Yeah,
because so many people let other people tell them what they're able to do, what they're capable of, what they're competent, with. We let society tell us how we should look and act and be and do. And we each of us individually can do. I mean, it sounds very flippant, but we can do what we want to do. And
right.
so it is a choice. And I say that very carefully because I say within legal and moral bounds,
For sure,
theoretically.
in balance.
But I think that we all have many more choices than we think we have. So it's changing what you think so
Hmm.
that you can live the life that you actually want to live instead of the life you were told you should.
Absolutely. In between choices, having the power, we really can create and also live life. You know, you hear the saying, live life to the fullest, right?
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to being present, come down to making choices that are balanced for you in the moment. You know, of course, we always have higher sight later in the journey,
Oh, yeah.
may change some things, but just in the moment, just consider, you know, and also consider yourself. And I think this is exactly why I wanted you to be a part of this conversation because Be Relief and the Flow isn't just about wellness practices, right? It's about understanding ourselves on a deeper level. Even when we're
Yes.
in platonic relationships or even romantic, we get to learn someone, you know, you spend time with them, and I think we can do that to ourselves as well, to get on that deeper level and to explore, you know, what happens when we begin bringing our mind and our body, our emotions, our
Right.
breath, and even consciousness into greater alignment. So I know that we're about to wrap things up. Is there anything else that you would like to leave the people with before our event?
I just am so grateful to have been chosen to speak. I hope everybody will come and join us. I know there's another speaker as well that's going to be sharing. So I
Mhm.
just think this is an opportunity, if you are interested, and hopefully you are, in growing and learning a little bit more about how life can be a little bit better for you or a lot better, because your life can change the moment you decide, the moment you choose to. You just
Yeah,
have to choose it. And part of choosing that is investing, a little bit of time, a little bit of effort in joining women that want the best for you as well. So please come join us. We want to just share and have you experience this beautiful information that we have to share with you,
yeah.
and see what you do with it. You never know what can happen.
For sure. Dana, I think what makes this conversation so important is that healing isn't just about getting through what happened to us, it's about what becomes possible, you know, when we
Yeah.
finally realize that we have a voice, that we have choices, and that we have the ability to consciously participate in the life that we're creating, right? And
Exactly.
I think that's exactly the kind of conversation we're bringing to Be Relief in the Flow. I will be there. Natasha Ike, she will be there as well. She's a TED Talk speaker, author as well. I'm excited to have her come. And of course, Dana will be joining us. We're excited about speaking with you all. Make sure you are attending on August 29th, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is on Zoom, so it's easily accessible. So make sure you guys come. Definitely comment below something that you are taking away from this conversation. I think it was fantastic. A lot of nuggets, a lot of jewels dropped. And we're just going to just prepare for our event and make sure you are leaving more prepared, more suited for your journey Just think of us as your superhero team behind you, giving you some tools to ignite your power, to make sure that you have something that you can use on those days that maybe you're not feeling at full battery charge, right? So we'll definitely will see you guys soon. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.